Hello, everyone. My name is Helena Nikonole'nin. I'm a curator of Digital Serendipity exhibition. And today we start our first event in our public program. We start from artist talks by Roman Solodkov'u and Anna Shustikova. And I think we start from Roman. Roman, please.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Roman, and I'll start from talking about the work which I exhibit here at Sanat on Digital Serendipity exhibition. I will outline some of the key aspects of this work, and then I will draw connections to my broader artistic practice and give examples of some of my other works. So, my work is called Manifest in Latin Space. I hope that you had time to see it and maybe interact with it even. And I'll start by elaborating on its title. And the Latin space, it's a multidimensional mathematical space, which is a representation of a deep layer of the neural network. And the weights inside the space, they represent the way the neural network has interpreted the data set. And therefore, it kind of harbors this logic of the neural network with respect to the data set, and it also harbors all the biases which were introduced inside this data set. And in particular, if we're being more specific for StyleGAN 2 and in other generative networks, the particular point in the space corresponds to an image which would be generated with this distribution of values. For me, there are several core aspects inside of this work. So first of all, like what I do here in general is I create an alternative interface to interact with the neural network without any type of coding or using some other conventional interface. Instead, I try to create this blending between the 3D space like in which we exist, the physical one, and this multidimensional digital space, which cannot be translated into the physical one, because, for example, for this particular architecture of the neural network which I use, it has 512 dimensions, and of course, this kind of dimensionality cannot be represented in the physical space, and this is actually something with which I work in my other projects, is this different ways which we can blend between these digital spaces and the physical ones, or create some type of correspondence between them. And of course, it's important for me to highlight that this kind of transfer from the digital to physical, it always introduces some biases, and it also it cannot be done in a complete way. Something is always lost in this translation. And another important aspect here is that I create that this interface it uses this kind of haptic and embodied way of interaction, because usually when we interact with various technologies, it is almost always done with a way of different screens and flat surfaces, which often reduce or kind of restrict the body, even though inevitably we do use our bodies to interact with them, like our fingers, and we perceive with our sensory organs. Yet still, due to this immersive quality, we forget about our bodies when we interact with digital technology often. And for me, it is crucial to keep the connection of the user with her or his body. That's why I create this kind of interfaces, which involve, well, let's say, more complex actions. And it's also like certain possibility for hacks is included inside this work, even though it was not initially intentional, still I'm decided to keep these possibilities because, for example, for this work, what I do is I'm doing the chroma keying on the image which is captured by the camera, and I only kind of keep the red channel. And therefore, even though inside this installation it is assumed that the viewer will interact using this red ball, also any other object will work too, and it opens like prospects for viewers to like, engage with the work in a more playful way. Yes, and talking about play, my work looks kind of playful, both in terms of colors and these balls which I use. And it's also an important aspect for me because I invite viewers to participate in this unstructured play with the neural network, which is very different compared to the way digital technologies are usually approached. But it's also important that this play, it might be innocent in conditions of the installations, but it's not innocent when we talk about more general usage of the neural networks. And what I'm talking about is that even though neural networks are assumed to be something like which can create objective interpretations about things based on the data sets, but this, of course, is an illusion. And even though we can have a very full understanding of the algorithm itself, still we cannot quite grasp the logic according to which particular data set will be interpreted, and thus also when neural networks are used and trained, certain parameters need to be configured manually, and this is done by human participants, and thus there is also this kind of alchemical or playful aspects to it. So it's not some kind of perfect or unbiased technology. And what I mean by that is that this aspect of play is always present when working with neural networks, yet I just make it more explicit in my work. And in particular for this work, as I've mentioned, my focal point is creating an interface, yet I work with a particular neural network, which is Telgen2, and the one which is trained on the ImageNet dataset. It's one of the largest image datasets in the world, and it is often used by different companies when they need to train classification algorithms and some other similar networks. And there were several controversies with this dataset because, first of all, the labeling for classification algorithms is done by humans, and of course the biases are being introduced in the process, and therefore the trained neural network is also biased. And from here, I guess I can either move on to some other projects of mine, or maybe if you have some questions about this particular work, I could also answer them.
I actually have some questions. Can you tell us more about the hacks? Because I remember some particular example. Can you tell us about this?
Sure, yeah. When I first exhibited this work at Rodchenko Art School, Anna had some red flowers with her, and she could like create this interpolation in the Latin space and produce some results on the screen by just moving them around. Yeah, I think this invites like, because I define a certain set of rules for the installation, but they can be easily broken, and this is something which I think is important in the general discourse about technologies, like showing how fragile they actually are and how easily they can be manipulated.
And I have another question. You showed this work several times, and each time there were some differences, some little differences, or maybe not that little. So what do you think about the last representation? And tell us more about these differences and what they mean for you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question because I actually enjoy the fact that the installation looks slightly different each time it is exhibited. Let me show you some other manifestations for comparison. For example, this is the way it looked. Now let's start with this one. At the Extra Museum exhibition. And here we had arrows just drawn on the sides. And personally, I prefer the option where these arrows, which represent the coordinate system, are actually made physical, because this enhances this aspect of blending between the digital space and the physical space, which I also make a focus on. Yeah, and in Solyanka, what I enjoyed is the space, which is really, how should I call it, rough or messy, and it also creates this kind of contradiction to this like perfect mathematical space in which the neural network operates. Yeah, what I like about this last one, first of all, the space is really like clean. I mean, in mathematical terms and visually. Yeah, we've also introduced the coloring scheme to the arrows, which introduces this reference to different, the way that axes are being represented in mathematical articles and things like that. So far, this one, I guess, is my favorite.
You mean
Yeah.
this one at Akbank Sanat,
Yeah,
the
last
last,
one.
the last
Yeah,
version,
yeah,
yes.
It looks, yeah, that's
Okay, thank you.
yes. And so I will talk about several other projects of mine. And even though they are not connected with the AI in particular, still there are certain similarities, and I will highlight them right now. So, as I've said, an important aspect for me is this contradiction and tension between the physical and the digital, especially in terms of space, for example. And almost always my installations, they act as a type of an interface. And I think this is actually one of my last installations which are made up to this day. It's called Thin Line Between Pauses, and it was made after the beginning of the war in the situation of emigration, and it's done actually in collaboration with my friend Vova Unanyan. And what I was doing here, I was thinking about working with the data, and in particular, I was interested in how, in these conditions of the physical division and absence, digital communication becomes more thick and palpable, kind of. It borrows some of the physical presence which is lacking. And so what I did, I downloaded data from the Telegram Messenger, and I've extracted the data about the duration of pauses between messages. And then I've done two things. So first of all, I've done a data sculpture in 3D space, and I will elaborate on that in a second. And I also made a physical sculpture made from metal, which looks almost flat. You can see from this angle that it's almost not present. And in this act, I also highlighted this kind of contradiction between the digital and the physical, and also the absence and the presence, because it's the pauses which are made material and manifested. But since they are kind of, it's also, I think, posits an important question about the digital, because in digital, well, dimension, let's say, there is like no difference whether the number denotes something present or absent, like if we're talking about a pause, which cannot be said about the physical world, if like we assume that there is some distinction. Yes, so there is this kind of data sculpture in digital space, which is 3D and has certain volume to it, while its physical manifestation is a more collapsed and constrained one. And another aspect of this work is the digital space made with Unity engine. in which there is a collage of different 3D reconstructed spaces, both from Moscow, where I was at that time, and from Tbilisi and Yerevan, where my friend was. So this was kind of this imperfect and messy way to bridge the gap between these different spaces in one particular environment, yet to highlight this kind of the way that it cannot be translated into the physical space. And if I may, I'll show you the short video, which denotes kind of the way that this space of 3D reconstructed places can be navigated. There are also some sounds there, also from different places, which do not match the locations which are depicted here. Well, I think you can see the idea, so okay, that was weird. Yes, so I guess that's all for that work. Another one which also works with this connectedness between digital and physical, but if in previous one I was talking more about the tension between them, here I actually investigated the way that these spaces can be connected, and this is a game, well, roughly saying, which involves interaction with digital models by interacting with the physical objects, by touching them. And this one, the topic for it was the non-places or liminal spaces, which describe the spaces like metro and airports and things like that, which do not have like some particular character to them and which are instead more kind of schematic. And in this work, I wanted to explore if we can make these spaces more inhabitable, if we can create these alternative ways to interact with them in a more intimate way. So let me also show you the video. I think this one is better. Yeah, so this is a view from the exhibition, and this is just the way I demonstrated the principle at home. So let me show you. Yeah, so in this game you navigate this kind of wide, very schematic space, but then you find some objects which do not exactly like, which seem a bit out of place, and when you come closer to them, you need to touch the physical object in front of you to kind of to interact with the one in the digital space, therefore creating this kind of blending between the digital and the physical. It's a pretty short one, and there are not so many mechanics in that. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight this like particular aspects of the connection. Okay. Yes, and here I'll go from blending digital and physical spaces to like another aspect which I mentioned, which is creating this kind of more embodied ways to interact with technologies and with different digital aspects. This is not entirely finished projects, but I still think it's a good example. It's called axial transcoding device, and it's a speculative device which creates this interface for the embodied perception of different time series data by translating the values in the data set into the intensity of vibrations. And it was assumed that different modules of this device are located along the human spine. And thus, conceptually, what I make is I make a translation between the mathematical axis on which this data originally exists to the axial organ of the human body, which is the spine. So I've designed this kind of models with particular elements for inclusion of electronics, unfortunately, which was not finished. Then I have a kind of video to demonstrate the principle. And yeah, maybe do we have time at this point?
I think so, yes.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I'll show shorter version. Let's start here. Yeah, so there is no sound to it, so I guess I could have just put it in the background, but here I visually depict the principle of the way that the device was supposed to work. Mm-hmm. And the last installation, which I wanted to show, it was also made after the beginning of war, and I think that it's quite connected to it conceptually or affectively, at least, maybe even affectively rather, which is called Border, which is a play between words. Border is something which separates things, and the board, which is a tool to describe things and thus communicate. And here, I guess, I get more into the abstraction of the interface and the communication in general, without some particular peculiarities. So it looks like this board with the barbed wire which goes through it. And on the technical side of things, I have a thermal sensor attached to the barbed wire, which is a device which measures the electrical capacitance of the objects near it, and thus it can be used to measure the distance to the conductive objects. And this distance was used as an input in the granular synthesis, so that when visitors approached the wire, different audio samples of speech started to play in. But still, it gave kind of an uncanny effect, because even though you can recognize it's definitely human speech, you can hardly distinguish any particular words, which also speaks to the way that communication got melted, let's say. And as they approach to it, this speech, it gradually transforms to the white noise. And when viewers move away, the different speech sample starts to play. And let me show you the short documentation. Yes, and here I kind of work with these different aspects of the communication, but the crucial point for me in this work was the idea that communication always requires the border on which it can happen on, even when it tries to eliminate this border. And another aspect here is that even though barbed wire is usually used as the way to denote the border, and it's something which actually invites avoiding touching it, instead in setup like that, when it intertwines with the other border, which is glass in this case, it actually creates kind of a source and a focal point on which the communication can happen. And it was very kind of enjoyable for me to watch that people on the exhibitions, they were really they weren't trying to avoid touching it, and they really this became more tactile object for them. And even though I can be quite elaborate when I work with installations, because as I've said, it's hard to talk about the speciality and the embodied processes in the 3D graphics. I also do 3D graphics and animation quite a lot. This is kind of a parallel, let's say, line of my practice. I also explore topics which are relevant to those which I've mentioned, but I think I'm not going to speak about it at length. Yeah, and I guess now maybe I can answer some questions that
I actually have a question. You created two pieces, quite new pieces after when the war started, and I was wondering, how were you reflecting on the war and your artistic practices? How they did you have kind of like a natural feeling, or you felt like there is a demand for some political work, because it's kind of like a big discussion now about Russian artists, if we have a right to do some non-political works. And so do you have some pressure? Do you feel some pressure?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I actually do feel some pressure, and it can get complicated because there is, yeah, well, as you've said, this kind of pressure to make a very direct political statement. Yet I think that not all artistic practices kind of are, how should I say, are suitable to it. What I mean is that if I work with some topics which are a bit different, it's hard for me to make some political statement inside my artwork. Yeah, so I think in these cases it's more important to make your statements as just a person, not necessarily in the artistic practice. But I believe that actually I do feel that no matter what are your particular artistic interests, the war and events like this, they inevitably influence it. So in my view, this work, which is called Border, it's actually it was a reflection on communicative issues and borders, which of course got really intense when the war started. And even though it's not a transparent on which something is written, it's still I reflect some conditions which are connected with the war and which kind of resonate with my practice. So I cannot, I think, organically speak about all the topics which are important, but some there is also some aspect of them which would resonate with the practice of any particular artist. yeah, I hope that.
Yeah, thank
that,
you. Actually,
that
yeah,
answers.
I feel that many artists also feel the pressure to do political works, but it's also, I mean, it's problematic because many artists they just don't work in this field. I mean, the political art, especially in new media. So it's always interesting to know how different artists approach this. If you have any questions from the audience, please don't be shy.
Here, I think I should mention that I have a background in natural sciences, and thus visually I'm very interested in the visual aspect of diagrams, schemes, and things like that. And well, when working with 3D, the issue is that it's hard to work with the spatiality of the viewer. I mean, there is a space inside, okay, the digital space inside the artwork itself, but it's hard to work with the spatial aspects of its perception by the viewer. But still, I think that there is a certain element of well, working with the interfaces inside this field. It just works in a different way compared to the installations, because here I use some representational elements which just kind of refer to the particular objects which I depict. And then I have certain descriptive and diagrammatical elements which kind of guide your, I mean, not just in my work, but in general, the way they work is that they guide the way you perceive particular images and representations. And here I also try often to blend these distinctions. So in my work, these descriptive elements and the representational ones, they blend into one, like in the same space, and they act as they both act as agents which interact inside it. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Please. Please.
I had a question about... Mikrofon vereyim mi? Kayıt için. No, it's okay. It's fine. I can speak louder. If you can tell us about your studies, because I would like to know if nowadays Russia represents the same kind of possibilities for new artists to learn, or it's better to make your studies somewhere abroad. Is Russia enough good to make studies? Is it enough, I don't know, competitive with other countries as you as modern young artist?
Thanks, Leo, for this question. I think that well, it's hard for me to judge about whether how competitive it is. If you mean like the quality of the education, which happens there, because I haven't studied anywhere else, only in Russia. But I believe like that here more important issue is how these studies can be carried out now in situation of war and political repressions. And personally, I believe that often when we speak about education, we're talking about young people who, for example, cannot like make decisions to leave or do not have the conditions for it. And thus, I believe that it's important to maintain the educational framework inside Russia so that these people can continue like their studies, their development, and then like make decisions about their whereabouts later. I hope. I mean, if I understood you correctly. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? If you have no questions, then thank you, Roman.
Thanks.
And we are continuing with Anna Shustikova's presentation.
Hi, I hope Roma will open my presentation. Sorry for such a beginning, but this was a starting point of the project I'm exposing here. So I'm gonna speak about this project mostly, and just show few of recent works, because I'm feeling that after the beginning of war, I'm changing, and my artistic praxis is transforming, and all this happens slowly, and I can just show some few pieces and maybe something ongoing, work in progress, what I'm working now, because I don't want to show my my earlier works, but this one actually was made before the war. I started it about 18 months ago, but I think that projects about gender issues are still important in every time, so I'm exhibiting it and I'm going to talk about it. Actually, I started this project as an experiment. I had no intention to do it this way. I just read a work of Trevor Paglen and Kate Crawford, a text excavating AI, a very important critical article about how neural networks work and how problematic is textual labeling of images, because text and image couldn't be every time make a pair, and there are a lot of problematic ethical, political issues in making these pairs of text and image. In that text, he discussed ImageNet. Roma told a little bit about it. This is a huge database of millions of images labeled with words, and maybe it's okay when these are images of apples or houses or cars, but when we came to images of people, they are sometimes strangely labeled, because not every, for example, not every person sitting in front of computer is a programmer, but this example isn't offensive, it's neutral, and some labels in the system are offensive or giving us some representation of biases that people who made these connections between words and images had. For example, there were such labels as alcoholic or whore or something like that, which is actually pretty strange, but you can give such label to just looking at an image of a person. So that time when I started this project, it was spring 2021, there was a popular text-to-image architecture, clip glass. Nowadays, of course, there are much more popular neural networks like this. Maybe you tried some of them, I don't know, Midjourney, Dallier, or something like that. They can give perfect realistic images, but I'm not actually interested in realism and in the way they, which aesthetic they have, but I'm interested in how they work inside. And that way, that time, clip glass was popular, and it was trained actually at this ImageNet database. So I started to experiment with different words and different prompts. And when I came to prompts like woman, beauty, femininity, I got pictures like this. Actually, that was the first set of images I got. I was surprised because, of course, here I stopped before when they became too realistic, but actually they are sexualized and eroticized already at this step. Afterwards, I started to experiment with different prompts. I suppose maybe every human is represented by the network like naked body, but no, when I tried men prompts, they all were dressed, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna work with that. I made a lot of such pictures, I think hundreds of them, and all of them, they're very So here are some examples of what I got. Some of them looked for me like sculptures. So I decided to make sculptures out of them. For example, one in the corner is actually presented at the show. I made 3D models, actually not I, but Roma, as my friend, he made 3D models for me. And like this, and I made them 3D printed because I thought that the best method of making sculpture from machine-generated image is machine printing without my participation in production. But this isn't the final step or the only way to exhibit this work, because I was not only interested in showing this problem of machine male gaze or saying just what all neural networks are biased, but I was interested if it is possible to change it somehow. Of course, I can't change labels in database with millions of images, but I can make, as an artist, some experimental conditions where the way women are presented by neural networks, this way could be changed. So this is still those sculptures, and once I made an experiment at the exhibition. That time this work was presented just with pictures, and there was a QR code where people could upload images of women if they thought that there are some images that better present women, but what is shown on this wall. And I got hundreds of images, actually. Almost all of them were portraits. And what I did, at the first step, I collected all images I got from Clipglass neural network, all this naked, eroticized, almost human or a little bit uncanny forms, and I trained a trained style gun to create the same images. So because in this way I could retrain this neural network to give me images that look differently. And then I collected pictures from visitors of this offline and online exhibition. I don't remember exactly how many hundreds there were, but several. And when I retrained my network, and in the beginning everything was okay because people uploaded portraits, sometimes selfies, but at the end of the exhibition, actually at the last day, someone uploaded a whole lot of images of some strange animals with tooth fur, some horror movie characters, and stuff like that. And of course, if my dataset collected from guests of exhibition is very tiny, these images from horror movies, influenced the result a lot, because these were pictures I got in the beginning without these monsters. Dataset was small, so they look a bit familiar and a little bit strange because I didn't prepare dataset making. When you work with images of faces, you have to put eyes in the same point because it's just difficult to understand what this is something the same. But after this person added these monsters, women faces began to look like that, with maybe this is my favorite from that And I didn't know what I should to do, because I didn't know why this person did it. Maybe he really thinks that women are like this, or maybe that was just a joke, or he wanted to hack a dataset, because actually this is the perfect way to hack a dataset when you have an access to this early stage when dataset is gathered. You put wrong images and it with wrong labels. For example, you put in the dataset of lions images of dogs, and all work will be spoiled. So I tried to find this person who did it, and actually I found him, and he said, yes, that was an attempt to hack a dataset. So I decided not to exclude these images and to show it, because it became an experiment not only about changing the way people look at women, but about this democratic tool of deciding how something should look like and to be. So here I may stop with this project. Any questions?
I actually have a question. I had a presentation in Leiden University in the Netherlands in September, and I showed your work there. And I showed actually a particular slide, also the results of this training with the data set from participants. And I remember somebody asked me a question about the skin color, because can you show the slide again? I think this one, because somebody asked me about skin color of the women.
Oh, this is a wonderful thing, because one person, I think he had a lot of time, because he took one video clip. I don't remember the song, but it was with a lot of women faces from different parts of the world. So it was about 100 images from that clip. They were always of the same size and were different colors. So it became something in the middle,
Okay.
not too white, not
Yeah,
only white.
that was the
at
question,
last.
yes.
So that was one person who helped us.
To create a diverse data set.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Please. Okay, then let's continue. Maybe you can show us other works. by you.
I maybe saw one work which I made actually this year. Actually, I'm not a digital artist. I'm working mainly with sculpture, and when war began, I had a very strange feeling that I stayed in Moscow. I haven't immigrated immediately, but and everything was looked the same. You are in the same place you were before, but at the same time, you lose orientation in the city. You can't recognize some places. Everything looks different, and everything seems to be ruined. So I was interested if I can make a sculpture about this feeling, and I was looking for material I can work with. And I noticed that Organization of United Nations decided that 2022 is the year of glass. And I thought, wow, this is a perfect material to speak about such condition, because at one hand, glass is handmade material, but at the other hand, this is something which can be created by some extreme events. Meteorite, for example, nuclear explosion, lightning when it's goes to the sand. So I decided to make some kind of handmade glass, but which is created in some catastrophic conditions. So I made a high voltage, I don't know, experimental station, let it say, to create glass from sand. And I gathered different pieces from around my house, because I had this feeling what I don't realize where I am. I gathered this sand, I gathered some metal elements, flowers in spring, and made this exhibition or this installation or sculpture. It even had a smell. When you came close to it, it had a smell of my garden where I live, with apples and some flowers. So it was exhibited like this, very teeny piece on a big wall, and Roma's work also here. So actually this is the only work I made this year and which is completed. I have something ongoing, also material work with glass and some experiments with neural networks as well. Maybe I can talk a little bit about it all.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. I may show just several pictures because this is also an interesting thing about some biases, or I can call it biases, neural networks. It's also about text-to-image network, Midjourney, which is actually maybe the most cutie or beautiful network, but here I wasn't interested in aesthetics as well, but I was interested, and it also I just found it accidentally, that it generates very different pictures if I give it the same text in Russian and English. You can guess where is Russian and where is English. Actually, any ideas?
Left one is Russian?
Huh?
The left one is Russian?
Yep. The left one, the red one is Russian. And actually, I didn't want to talk about prejudice about Russian language, of course, because there are reasons to Russian language to be represented like a language of explosions, wars, destruction, and apocalypses. No problems with that. But I decided to take texts which actually, when you read them, they are very pretty. They are about forests, mountains, I don't know, lakes. But actually, these texts are songs about places where nuclear weapons are produced or were produced in Soviet era. So when I translated this text into English and gave it to a neural network, she didn't see any problem in that and gave me pictures of forests and mountains. But when I gave it same text in Russian, she thought that something is wrong and gave pictures which may be better presenting such places, because actually I was born in, I wasn't born, but I grew up in a town where in Soviet era nuclear weapons were produced, and actually it's still closed and surrounded by wall and guarded by soldiers, and you have to show a special permit to get inside. But in songs about these cities were nothing about this nature, real nature of these objects, about these factories, nothing. But neural network created pictures which are more maybe suitable to these places than these pretty ones. But actually, this is very interesting. Before working with sculpture, I was working with documentary photography, and I tried to make a project about my hometown. And I tried to make it looking with double nature of this town. How can I show it double nature of this town? Because it's actually really beautiful. The left upper picture is like my hometown. You just saw it. But I didn't understood how I can make it photographically to show both sides of this place. But neural network made it for me because just the same text and it showed everything. But this is just work in progress because now I don't know how can I present it properly. I just have pictures.
But did you try with different texts? Also like Russian, English?
Oh, yes, I tried with lyrics. I don't know why lyrics is so problematic, but I tried it with love lyrics. And in English, when it was translated into English, I got pictures of flowers. But in Russian, I had some cyberpunk blue and red pictures. I don't know why. I tried to read how this network was trained, but I didn't got where is this linguistic issue, why they are so different.
Okay, probably it identifies Russian language as a feature connected to this kind of
This is strange because when I tried with one-word prompts, pictures were almost the same. But when I tried something bigger, especially something poetic, it became looking like this. It's not looking like this.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Did you try DALL-E?
DALL-E gives the same images for both languages because I think DALL-E, I read about it that it translates every language into English, I suppose, and so only after that association of words and images happen. And here there
with
is
Midjourney.
Yeah, this is
I
Midjourney.
think it would be interesting to try other languages.
Yes, I want
French, Spanish, German.
My problem is that I haven't paid $30 to use it unlimitedly, so
Okay.
I have only 200 prompts a month, and I do what I can.
I see. But this is very interesting. Thanks. Do you have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question. You didn't really talk about the title of your work at display here. What about Plain and Touching?
Oh, this is just a quote from the song I hate. This is song Barbie Girl. Very male gaze song by Aqua. And when I saw these pictures and decided to make sculptures out of that, I thought that these sculptures will look like kind of Barbies. So I chosen that quote to name my project. And actually only today I realized that two projects I show, they are both named after some songs, because Where Have All the Flowers Gone? I just named it in Russian originally, but actually this is the name of anti-war song, very popular and famous one.
Is it allowed to touch your sculpture?
Maybe after the exhibition.
Actually, I want to mention that you also have chosen the color for the 3D printing material to make them look like dolls.
Yep, and that was a problem because when people make 3D models, they don't need to make it looking like a skin. So there were a lot of red variation and very few variation of skin-looking color, and we had a problem which one from three to choose. But maybe it's that was the right choice. This one. Okay.
Yeah, they look great. Actually, can you tell us about your last idea and this work in progress about this the sculptures from this uranium glass?
I decided that because of this my atomic past or childhood, or I don't know how to name it, this year I have to work with some atomic issues because this again became kind of threat we hear and we are frightened about. And because I'm interested in materials and how they transform, and I started working with glass when I created this sculpture, I decided, or I should say I found out an interesting fact that maybe all of you know that, but I found out it only this spring, that in the beginning of 20th century and in 19th century and actually earlier, during about 2000 of years, there was green glass, which was very beautiful, and there are some uranium salts were used to color it, and it was very cheap actually to use it as a color, but it changed when atomic programs started in different countries, because uranium became crucial material to make bombs, and even in Moscow there was a story when one architecture wanted to make uranium glass pieces in metro, but he had an idea before the World War II began, and during the war he couldn't release it, and when he came with this idea after the war, everyone told him, no uranium, you could use gold, you could use everything, but uranium is too valuable now. And so he made decoration of this station with
Stained glass.
with stained glass. This is Novoslobodskaya station, if you were in Moscow. And I was fascinated by this transition of material that from glass, actually, and there still are some cups of uranium glass, or you can drink from it in the morning, your morning coffee. How this material made a transition from some cheap color to something very valuable and which couldn't be used the same way it was used before. So now I'm thinking about working with uranium glass, but I don't have any examples because it's just in progress. I'm just collecting
you told
material.
Me that you bought it already.
I'm buying material.
And it's quite fascinating that it's possible to buy it in Russia, like online.
Yep. But no. You can buy it everywhere. For example, the first thing I bought were uranium. Biser.
I don't know.
I have a language issue. Some small glass balls to make jewelries. So they are made in Eastern Europe. You can buy it online. You can make your uranium jewelry and wear it near to your skin if you want to. So it was the first thing I bought. Yep.
My question is that what is the effect of uranium on glass or some?
It becomes green, and in ultraviolet light, it glows very beautifully.
So it's like stained glass or like stainless steel but very polished one. I don't know.
Maybe I don't understand properly what stained glass is.
Yeah, I mean what is the how it look like?
The problem, I don't have any pictures here. I have pictures on my mobile phone. The first item I can come to you and show it because the first item I saw made out of uranium glass, that was a small sculpture of Lev Tolstoy, and that was made in that's it. I wouldn't show you Lev Tolstoy, sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Thank you. It seems very radioactive.
But it's actually not. It's actually not. It's okay to drink out of that. Maybe not every time you drink water, but you shouldn't eat it, because this way it could be harmful.
But it's actually funny that they created Lev Tolstoy's sculpture
And that's very
from
interesting.
uranium glass.
That was created in the beginning of not of World War II, but when Russia entered World War II. So in 1941 it was created, and maybe it was one of the last items created of uranium glass then. In Russia, because there are some factories in United States and in Europe which still create uranium glass.
But I think it's already like an art object, Lev Tolstoy's sculpture from uranium glass.
But actually there are artists who work with this like material, even at in Venice Biennale. Right now there is a sculpture made of it in church. Green glowing tree lying in front of altar. Or you can buy some jewelry.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any more questions from the audience, please? If not, then thank you, Anna. Thank you, Roman. Thank all of you for coming this evening. And that's it. And please visit the exhibition if you haven't done it yet. It's fascinating.
Thank you, Lena, for
Yes, thanks
this.
a lot for hosting us.